It is likely that ancient civilizations that had been on Earth might have done things differently in comparison to what we know today. It is undeniable that there could be various branches of history. R.A. Boulay, the author of the book Flying Serpents and Dragons, discusses the typical shape of Noah's Ark and tries to explain that the vessel could be different from its generic illustration in the ancient texts. Could it be that Noah's Ark was in fact a gigantic spaceship piloted by ancient aliens?
Section 51.
In his book Flying Serpents and Dragons, published in 2005, R.A. Boulay discusses the typical shape of Noah's Ark and tries to explain that the vessel could be different from its generic illustration in the ancient texts. Indeed, in chapter 13 of this book, Boulay pointed out the similarities between a saucer-shaped vehicle and Noah's Ark, which is usually depicted as an ancient sea-going ship with a rounded hull, pointed prow and stern, with a keel running the full length of the ship. On its deck, a cabin is shown running the length of the ship. Interestingly, the design of the Ark, as mentioned in traditional stories, is according to the late Middle Ages in Europe, about which Boulay is uncertain. There are only two descriptions of the ship in ancient literature, neither of which is very satisfactory from naval engineering standards, since they are completely unseaworthy designs. And yet, there have been different artistic interpretations of the appearance of the Ark throughout the ages. For example, in this picture exposed in the British Museum in London, Noah's Ark is shown as a round, domed vessel with birds and animals peering out of the portholes, with Noah and his family staring through a large opening on the main deck below. In another interpretation, Noah's Ark is typically portrayed as a traditional ship, such as in this Italian mid-16th century painting. On the other side, biblical accounts generally describe the Ark as large, about the size of a 19th century seaman's chest, made of gold-plated wood and topped with two large golden angels. It was carried using poles inserted through rings on its sides. The Ark has been linked to several of the Old Testament's miracles. But that is not excuse for the description of the Ark in the Sumerian account of the Great Flood. If the translation of Sumerian texts is correct, the Ark is depicted as a cube. This is not very convincing in view of the fact that the Mesopotamians were a sea-going nation. Sumerians and later people were well acquainted with the principles of shipbuilding and seaworthiness. All Sumerian cities had access to the sea, and sea-going ships are often described at anchor at these Sumerian ports. Boulay finds the Ark as a cube completely nonsensical, as there is no reason why the sea-going people would describe it with a shape that is incompatible with floating in the water. He added that there is something inappropriate with the translation and interpretation of the text that is provided. The complete text in the book of Genesis, in the Bible, which provides the description of the Ark, is as follows.
Make yourself an ark, or a box, of gopher wood. Make it an ark with compartments, and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you shall build it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. Make a skylight for the ark, terminating it within a cubit of the top. Put the entrance in the side of the ark, which is to be made with lower, second, and third decks.
It is described as a rectangular box with a flat bottom and straight sides, 300 cubits long, 50 wide, and 30 high. Since a Hebrew cubit was 18 inches, around 45 centimeters, Its dimensions were 450 feet long, around 162 meters, 75 feet wide, around 27 meters, and 45 feet high, around 16.2 meters, and as such was said to displace 43,300 tons. It is strange that Hebrews, who had a good word for ship, for some reason chose to call it a box or chest. However, this box of Noah was not a seaworthy craft, and as described was merely a rectangular box without keel, bow and aft braces, and other essentials required of sea-going ships. The story of the Great Flood was known worldwide and can also be found in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is believed to have been written down about 2000 BC. Moreover, the earliest mentioning of the Great Flood can only be found in the Sumerian literature. The story of the Ark came in the book of Genesis later after a number of changes and emendations. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, Utnapishtim is told to build a ship in order to survive the coming catastrophe. Ziusudra, from Atrahasis' epic, is the hero of the Sumerian account of the Great Flood. Utnapishtim is the Akkadian or Semitic name for the hero and is the hero of the Gilgamesh epic, the better-known Semitic version of the flood story. In the Sumerian account, the word used is Magurgur or very great ship. In the Akkadian or Semitic version of the epic, it is also called a great ship of Elipu Rabitu. Unlike the 3 decks of the Ark of Noah, the Ark of Utnapishtim has 7 decks and is then divided into 9 sections or compartments. It had a door and some sort of window as well. Traditional translations report the craft as being an exact cube with the height, length and width each being 120 cubits. Since the Akkadian cubit was 20 inches, around 46 centimeters, the craft would be a perfect cube of 200 feet, around 72 meters, on each side. Again, the Ark design is not unseaworthiness. Alexander Heidel, an Assyriologist and biblical scholar, brought up the problem of interpretation where certain scholars believed that a circular design of the Ark would be much more practical and that the text lends itself easily to this interpretation. However, this theory was summarily dismissed by other scholars. The Sumerian account also reveals that the god Shamash, also called Utu, played a key but unidentified role in its construction as well as advising Utnapishtim when to launch the ship. Since Enki was the Sumerian god of ship building and logically the advisor on ship construction, by all tradition he should have been the one dealing with Utnapishtim rather than Shamash. This divine assistance is also noted in the Book of Enoch, where the Ark is said to have been designed by the deity and built by a group of angels, which presumably assigned by Shamash according to Boulay. The circular shape of the Ark, with a row of windows along the top and designed by god Shamash, would in all probability result in an oval or saucer-shaped craft. There is also evidence that the Ark of Utnapishtim was propelled by some sort of fuel rod as part of a propulsion system, thus making it maneuverable and able to maintain stability in the stormy seas it was intended for. In 2010, Irving Finkel, a cuneiform expert at the British Museum, translated an ancient tablet describing Noah's Ark as round and built of reeds. He managed to piece together information on the Ark from a 3,700-year-old clay tablet. It is important to remember how important the writings are in the transmission of knowledge, but also in the formation of human thought across generations. Time can be an important factor in distorting the truth if one carefully examines the number of successive interpretations, whether scientific or artistic, throughout the history of humanity. This is why all this work of deciphering the first writings describing these significant events of our history is absolutely necessary. It is a work that must be as objective as possible. It is also a matter of intellectual honesty and openness if we want to get as close as possible to the truth about our origins on Earth. We all look forward to irrefutable proof that we did not arrive on this planet alone, but perhaps with the help of an outside presence. Unfortunately, despite all the evidence that is possible and imaginable, there will always be skeptics who will remain limited to one way of thinking, the simple boat sailing on the water, while others will be willing to make the effort to think differently, to think outside the box. On this YouTube channel, you are the first to know that the truth is elsewhere. Section 51 is on social networks, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Don't forget to hit that like button and that bell button too. Don't forget to share the video and to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. This was DOZgeek with Section 51. I'll be back really soon. Open your eyes, watch the sky, live long and prosper.